You remember when Max Payne first probably introduced bullet time into an action game, and then that mechanic was subsequently copied by pretty much everything? Well, Severed Steel combines Max Payne with SuperHot in what feels like one of the freshest iterations of this mechanic. And Greylock Games, led by Matthew Larrabee, who essentially developed this game on his own, wants you to experience what he describes in his own words as a mashup of the coolest action game mechanics that I've encountered in my 30 years of gaming. He didn't exactly have the skill set for this before he set out to do it, but perhaps in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Well, let's find out. The story surrounds Steel on her quest for revenge against a large corporation. She spent the majority of her life working for the company Edensys. However, after the loss of one of her arms, the corporation decides it's no longer in their best interests to keep her on board, and that's where her tale of revenge begins. Between some levels there are comic book style panels, but story is not the primary focus of Severed Steel. That comes from the gameplay, the bloody rampage that follows your progression through Edensys. Starting out in the sub-levels and climbing your way to revenge and redemption. The controls are going to be familiar to anyone who's played a first-person shooter in recent memory. The right stick controls the camera and the left the player. Right off the bat, there is no option for gyroscopic aiming, and honestly, I don't understand why it's not here. It's not a deal breaker, but it will improve the experience, so please devs, add this in a patch. Steel can sprint around the environment, she can slide under scenery, kick the guns out of enemies' hands, or double jump, wall run, and then Klinsman her way through the nearest open window before filling every enemy in the room with lead. Before she does any of this though, she's given a very simple objective. It might be to kill all the enemies, to destroy certain terminals, or reach a specific area of the level. Every enemy in the game has a unique weapon. You can even sneak up on enemies, steal the weapon from their holster, and reintroduce them to it. With the developer clearly stating a love of classics such as Max Payne, I was wondering if fear was also an influence, and it turns out it is. The slow motion mechanic can be performed whenever you're performing a stunt. Stunts include the wall running, the sliding, and the diving through glass. This alone was probably the smartest gameplay design choice they made. It means that you never have to worry about running out of slow motion, but it forces the player to keep moving, keep performing stunts, and it's what gives Severed Steel its frenetic pace. As you'll have no doubt noticed, enemies are visible through walls, and the same goes for any objectives. Eventually, your character will acquire an arm cannon. Metroid and Nintendo have entered the chat. And then things get really fun. There are a number of different arm cannons. These are accessed with the L bumper button and also have a charge shot available, but it all gets a bit Red Faction, as you can blast your way through most walls. Imagine a slow motion run, but you've run out of normal ammunition. Oh, and by the way, when you run out of ammo, you toss your weapon towards an enemy. If you time it right, you can actually kill them with that, grab their own gun and decorate the room with their mates. But you're sliding, you're out of ammo, and you shoot your arm cannon to make a hole through the floor before diving down and landing on the head of another and karate kicking them into next Tuesday. Larrabee has perfected the flow of combat. It's so enjoyable. There were a few moments where I got slightly lost and a map of some sort would have been nice, or some sort of direction, but generally the levels are designed in such a way that you don't really have to think too hard, and being able to see the objective through the walls means you're usually fine. Now, the weapons that enemies drop are categorized into many different flavors. Some of them are lightweight with more bullets, others heavy, and then there are the flamey ones. These can actually melt through entire walls before cooking the hapless SWAT team. The parkour movement mechanics allow for skilled players to reach almost any area, and that hand cannon's ability to shoot through walls means making new routes on the fly becomes a real possibility. I think there needs to be a new genre, just entitled games that are actually fun, because just like Neon White, which was recently released, Severed Steel well and truly falls into that category. Now, the experience is facilitated by a number of tweaks. First and foremost, it's the wide field of view. Anyone that's played a first-person shooter at 70 FOV and then moved it up to 100 or 120 will know how much this peripheral vision can improve your target acquisition. You can die, and you will die many times, with the screen showing your proximity to death's door, but the stage resets quickly and you'll be back in the action. What I really enjoyed about Severed Steel was the lack of a timer. The way it's designed to facilitate that extremely aggressive pacing belies the fact that you can slow things down. A few moments behind cover or a slight flank around the enemy, it can all give you the time you need to plan out the next devastating encounter. Perhaps I'll wall run and double jump over the top, or go the old-fashioned route and kick the door down. When it all comes together, there's nothing quite like it. As you progress through the game though, it becomes much more tactical. Gone will be the simplistic task of simply killing all the enemies, and instead you'll be jumping from train to train, destroying engines, and then hopping headlong towards a mounted turret. Not to quite the same degree as SuperHot, Severed Steel begins to steer its brutal dance of death into one of calculated player proficiency within sandbox environments that reward ingenuity. Once your objectives are complete on any stage, you'll be sprinting to the exit before the stage progresses. Overall, gameplay is incredibly enjoyable. There are a number of toggles for changing the experience, such as the highlights surrounding players or the on-screen shake, as well as being able to remap all the buttons. When you finish the game, you unlock not only a new game plus, but Firefight mode, which includes lots of arenas and allows you to change the game's modifiers, things like big head mode, choose the different weapons, arm cannons, and it's a fun addition to really test your skills. It's a really fun experience. It doesn't completely avoid things like repetition, and there's always room for a few different types of enemy, but gameplay is a blast. It scores 18 out of 20. Controls are good with different options for auto-aiming and sensitivity toggles, but they could so easily be made great with gyro. They score 16 out of 20. Visually, everything's running on the Unreal 4 engine. There are a nice mix of environments, some of them more plain, and others that utilize an array of reflective surfaces with neon lights, but with everything reflecting the crisp, straight lines of the corporation behind it all. The game's running at 30 frames per second, and that seems very consistent. Certainly 60 would have been nice, but it performs well enough. Some of the effects, such as the slow motion and screen shake, can be toggled, and there are a few options for color blindness as well. Extra points has to go to the fact the game allows for destructibility. I'm not sure if that's a voxel-based system, but it offers real gameplay freedom, even if some of the explosive effects here lack a little punch. The audio is relatively strong with a mixture of upbeat drum and bass, electro, and it's nice that you can shuffle the music in the options menu. Overall, the visuals and performance are solid for the Unreal Engine, and everything looks particularly good when playing in handheld. They score 16 out of 20. The audio and music also scores 16 out of 20. Severed Steel will set you back £22.49, or your regional equivalent, which puts it a little bit higher than the Steam version, and all of this clocks in a 3GB download. It's a very fun game, and one which doesn't have a great deal of competition on Switch. Its biggest rival is probably Neon White, which retails at £19.99. So not too dissimilar. But what is dissimilar is the game length. Now here you're looking at around about 4 to 5 hours to complete the game, but you could do it faster than that. Although, as I say, you've then got the new game plus and that arena mode unlocked after you've finished it. It's very enjoyable, but I don't think it does quite enough to justify that price. Around £15 would have been the sweet spot. Overall, I give value 15 out of 20. Severed Steel came as a surprise to me. I hadn't heard of the game, I hadn't played it previously, but it's incredibly fun. If you're after a first-person shooter that isn't a roguelite and one that's going to make you feel like Neo from The Matrix, well, look no further. Severed Steel gets a SwitchUp score of 81%. A thanks to the developer and the publisher Digerati for the reviewed copy. Let me know in the comments if this is a game you're interested in, and as always, just a big thanks to all of you that enjoy the channel and to our patrons. Check out one of these videos, and for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya! You